Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. Today we're doing a Thai dish, or Thai stir-fry dish, called Pad Gra Prow. More colloquially here in these states, at least here in California, you'll see it a lot in a lot of Thai takeout, referred to as like Thai basil chicken, or some kind of English translation referring to the fact that it has a whole bunch of basil in it, and specifically Thai basil. Actually, more typically or more traditionally, it would include holy basil, but holy basil is really, really difficult to find. I would honestly say anywhere in the States, really, it's really difficult to find. Okay, so we're going to take a look at all of that stuff today and take a look at how I like to reproduce it. Today we're going to be making it with some Thai basil, because holy basil, again, is very tough to find in the States. So if you have any questions for me, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. I don't know everything about Thai cooking, but I know lots of stuff, so hopefully I can be helpful or informative, at the very least entertaining to watch. As with everything we cook, there's always a recipe video that goes along with what we're cooking on stream. Those recipes, they always live over on the YouTube channel, so if you haven't yet, definitely check out the YouTube channel. If you subscribe, Ham will pop up on the screen. That's the hamster that eats ramen. Ham loves to eat. Please feed him. What else? Those recipes, they come out every Friday, so a couple of Fridays ago, I want to say like last month maybe, we came out with the recipe for this particular dish. But those are out every Friday, and we've been kind of making our way through a whole bunch of Thai food of late. We also have done a couple of things that come from Thai takeout cuisine. We did some pad came out. We did some we did a pad Thai a long time ago. We did a pad see. I'm forgetting what else off the top that we've done. Oh, we did a pumpkin curry that was really tasty. So lots of stuff like that living over on the YouTube channel. So if you're interested, definitely check that stuff out. Alright, so kicking things off first, I'm starting off by crushing and mincing. This is going to be 4 cloves of garlic. So I just did this video, so I just finished editing or finished shooting a video for a garlic noodle in which I did not crush the garlic. So you'll notice is that we generally when we start off working with garlic, I always crush the garlic. There's a couple of reasons behind that. The main reason that we always crush our garlic is because when you crush garlic, it starts releasing its allicin. So you could think of allicin as like the juice of your garlic. If you don't crush it, that allicin, it doesn't come out. It actually doesn't even come out. It doesn't come out as well even when you start cooking it. So we want to give that garlic a good crush, and all of that allicin will just start popping out. The other great reason why we like to crush our garlic is because it's a lot easier to peel too, which is nice. In some instances, we do skip that peel or skip that crush because it helps presentation. So the main downside with crushing your garlic, if you're trying to retain the shape of your garlic, say if you're doing something that's really trying to highlight the garlic, like a crispy garlic noodle or anything with like garlic flakes, stuff like that, it doesn't work super well to crush it because it's basically just going to pulverize the garlic like we just did. So that's the only downside with crushing garlic. If you are doing that, it doesn't mean that you can't, you have to avoid crushing your garlic. What it just means is that you have to use a lot more garlic. So when I don't crush the garlic, I think we're closer to like, today we're using 4 cloves. Usually if I don't crush the garlic, I end up using like half a head or so in order to achieve the same results. So choose for yourself accordingly. Usually, I want to say the only reason why I wouldn't crush garlic, though, is for presentation. If we're really trying to get that garlic to sort of pop out and have more physical presence. But otherwise, just go ahead and crush it because it's going to taste better. Like so. So that's our garlic, and if we were sticking really traditional, we would probably stop Thai cooking. There's really nothing else and no other aromatics. This is probably the main one, is that garlic. Today I'm going to throw in some ginger because I have it, and it's also just going to taste good. So, and most commonly when you are cooking Thai food, you probably won't see the inclusion of ginger. If anything, you would probably see the inclusion of galangal, which looks similar to garlic or ginger. It's another form of aromatic root veggie, also commonly found in Thai food. Very rarely when I look up like or investigate into like really, really traditional Thai food or Thai cuisine, I very rarely see ginger. But because most of my background in wok frying comes from Chinese cuisine, we're going to use it. It's going to be really tasty. So we're gonna mince this up. Yeah. How to do it? I kind of need more ginger. Should be okay though. Looks like I got an uneven edge on my cutting board. Not good. All right, so that's our ginger and our garlic. Last up, so the last aromatic that we're going to use is going to be our chilies today. You can dial up or down or omit this element as much as you want. If you are particularly averse to heat, Thai chilies are particularly spicy. You might also see them referred to as like bird's eye chilies, similar thing, same thing. They are, I wouldn't say they're like super spicy. We're not talking about like ghost pepper spicy. But if you are particularly averse to spicy stuff, I would say avoid this a bit because they are reasonably spicy. If you don't like spicy stuff, I would say you could either omit it or you could also include something that's a little bit less intense. So you could use like a serrano, you could use a Fresno pepper, you could even use like a jalapeno. That would work too. What I have always said is that I love including Thai chilies because I think it's like a really iconic flavor to Thai cooking. It's not just about the heat, but it's also like the flavor that comes with the heat. So I love including it, but if you don't like spicy stuff, you could probably just leave it out. Or you can also dial it up or down. So today I'm including, I think that was 4. I forgot to count. I think that was 4 Thai chilies. If you are particularly averse, you could dial it back down. You could include 1 or 2 or 0. What I do like to do is I like to, when I have my Thai chilies up, I like to look for like a wide array of colors because I think it's pretty. So if you find when you're in the grocery store and you're shopping for Thai chilies, Thai peppers, we want to look for the ones that are really, really colorful because it's going to be nice and pretty. They all generally taste the same to me. You're all generally going to get the same quality of heat, but I like to look for ones where it's nice and colorful. Yeah. Do I pay a mortgage? I don't pay a mortgage. I am a renter. Here in the Bay Area, it is very hard to be a homeowner. Good question. That's the first time I've gotten that question. All right, next up we're going to run through, so for a Thai basil chicken, those are really the only element that is absolutely required is going to be our Thai basil. Other than that, most of what we're doing is going to be, it's not chili. Most of what we're doing can kind of all be adapted for what you happen to have in the refrigerator. Today, this is what I have in the refrigerator. The original recipe that I had written calls for a whole bunch of shallots. I think I used 2 or 3 shallots in that original recipe. Today, I'm going to be using some onion because I forgot to buy shallots. If you don't have onion, you could omit it. You could also replace it with another kind of vegetable. You could use like a bell pepper. That would be really tasty too. Do what you have to in order to make yours work. I missed the chili, so I'm adding this. So for our version today, we're going to be using, this is going to be half of a sweet white onion. If you've got one, you could use shallots too. If you've got a red onion, that would also be really tasty. I happen to be out of red onion too, so but use what you have. By the way, when we're peeling our onions, by the way, the first thing that you want to do is remove that outer skin, obviously the one that's not edible. But the second thing that you also want to do is probably remove the first one, so this first layer of skin. Generally want to pull this out because it's also going to be pretty tough and like kind of chewy, not really enjoyable to eat. So that's our onion. We're going to add those in pretty late. These onions, because they're so delicate, are going to head into our wok fry towards the end of the fry. It's going to be the second to last thing that we add. Second to last? Yeah, second to last thing that we add right before we add that basil. We're only going to let these wok fry for about like a minute, maybe 2 minutes or so. After that, we're really just going to pull them off. So for things like onions in a wok fry like what we're doing today, we don't want it to be in the wok for too long because it will eventually just overcook pretty quickly. So we want to treat those very gently. Alright, next up we're going to slice up, this is some green beans that I'm working with today. If you don't have green beans, you could swap this out for any other kind of durable veggie. Broccoli or gailan would be really tasty. Gailan is a Chinese broccoli. You could use a bell pepper, anything that's really thick and durable will work really well. Improvise and use what you've got. Today I'm using green beans because I love working with green beans. You could also, one of my favorites has been using snow peas. It's a great opportunity to swap in some snow peas. What we're going to do with these today is we're going to add them to our wok fry while the wok is empty. So we're going to pull everything out in a batch cook. And then we're going to add these afterward while the wok is empty. And then we're going to basically sear them how we would normally sear like chicken. And that's going to help our green beans pick up some nice bit of color and like darken qualities on the exterior. And that's going to be real nice and tasty for us. But then what we're going to do is, actually I think I'm going to skip the steam today. Depending on how you like your green beans, you can optionally also additionally steam it. In some of the recipes that we have done with green beans, what we'll do is we'll do the sear as we're going to do it. So we're going to add it to the wok, sear it, let it pick up some color. And then sometimes what we'll also do, depending on how we want those green beans to taste, or like what kind of quality we want them to have, I might also add some water to the wok following that, and then we'll let it steam for a little bit too. That's technically optional depending on like what quality of texture you want your green bean to have. What's going to happen when you let it steam like that, it's going to give it a little bit more tenderness. It's not going to be quite as like rigid. I like to do that on occasion because I don't particularly love it when green beans are like really, really tough, a little bit chewy. For this particular instance though, I actually think it's going to work out okay because it's the only really, really durable and rigid vegetable that we're using. But I think it was the string bean chicken that we had done, Panda Express had, where we seared the green beans, and then what you'll do is add a little bit of to the wok right after you finish searing it, and that's going to let the green beans get a little bit of a steam once you cover it up. Yeah, looks good. Alright, so last up, I'm giving these green beans a quick rinse. Wash your produce. Please wash your produce. I don't know why people still are against washing their produce. But I'm giving it a good rinse. Most importantly, more important than washing it even, is that we want to shake out all of this water. You want to try and make sure that we don't have water left behind when we get these into a wok fry. When there's water in your vegetables as they head into the wok, this is also true for meats too. Basically what's happening is that water makes contact with whatever hot oil that you have, and when cold water makes contact with hot oil, that's when you start getting sputtering, and that's how you get burns on your arms and stuff, and then you get oil in your face, and times will be had all around. So we generally want to avoid letting our wok build up too much water in it with our veggies, because otherwise you're going to burn yourself. It also will help keep your wok nice and hot too. The more water that we add, the more trouble that we have keeping the wok hot. Alright. So that's our green beans. I'm going to set these aside with our onions. And what else do we have? Yeah, let's do our pork. Is this pork? No, today we're using chicken. Alright, next up I'm going to be using, today we're using actually ground turkey, I think. Pretty sure this is ground turkey. Most commonly, or most like traditionally, you would see this done with ground chicken, as it's in the name, Gra Prow or Thai chicken, Thai basil chicken. You could use whatever kind of mince that you want. You could probably do it with ground pork. That would be really tasty. You could do it with like an 80-20 beef chuck. That would also be really tasty. Use what you have in this instance. I have always considered most of the time ground minces to be fairly interchangeable depending on what you have on hand. In Chinese food, probably the most common ground mince that you'll find is going to be ground pork. In Thai food, you generally don't see the use of ground pork. You probably more commonly see things like ground chicken. What you'll find in American grocery stores more often than ground chicken is usually ground turkey, which can be relatively interchangeable with ground chicken because it has similar fat content. But use what you have available. Most of the time when I'm working with this kind of ground mince, what I'm more looking for is not necessarily the type of meat, but the quality of fat content. So how much fat is going on. So for our marinade today, I'm going to keep it, this is relatively simple. Yeah, I think relatively simple. That's going to be about 4 tablespoons of soy sauce. That's about half a teaspoon of white pepper. I kind of just eyeballed it today. And finally, the last step is going to be half a teaspoon of cornstarch. The cornstarch, lots of people ask about cornstarch, why add it to marinades. It just generally, so the reason that we add the cornstarch to a lot of marinades, pretty much to every kind of ground mince marinade that we do, also to eggs and other, basically any kind of protein that we're wok frying, is because it helps keep the mince nice and tender. So without that the cornstarch, what happens is things start like overcooking really quickly because the wok is so hot. Since the wok is so hot, what will happen is that it starts to overcook really quickly. So with really high wok heat, you'll generally start seeing the exterior parts of your ground mince start like reaching like essentially like doneness, be essentially cooked within like a couple of seconds, usually about 10, 15, 20 seconds or so. That's not so great for things like ground chicken or ground pork because we want to make sure that it's cooked all the way through. So adding a little bit of cornstarch, it just kind of adds an extra like 20, 30 seconds to your cook time so that everything can cook a little bit more evenly. And that will help you avoid like really rubbery proteins. Cool. What else do we have? All right, last up, I'm going to assemble my sauce here. So this is going to be 4 tablespoons, hopefully 4. Yeah, 4 tablespoons of soy sauce. That's the last of the soy sauce. Next up is 2 tablespoons of fish sauce. That's maybe the most iconic Thai thing that you can do in any recipe is fish sauce. But then next up I'm going to do is take 2 ingredients that actually come from Chinese food. First up is going to be 1 tablespoon. This is dark soy sauce. If you're trying to keep it more traditional or like more close to what you would see in traditional Thai food, you wouldn't be using dark soy sauce. Obviously, you can tell this is Chinese writing on this bottle. Also, we can dark soy sauce comes from Chinese cooking. In Thai cooking, you would more commonly see the use of an ingredient called kikat manis, or I think it's like you would see it referred to as like Thai sweet soy sauce or something to that effect. Kikat manis here in Chinatown is pretty difficult to find. There's actually no Southeast Asian grocery stores anywhere like within the nearest vicinity of Chinatown. So most of the time, Thai to find. So what I'm using today is that's dark soy sauce, which comes from Chinese cuisine. They are very closely related, and I honestly think that you can get away with subbing those interchangeably and you'll be okay. And then last up, this is a single tablespoon of oyster sauce, which is optional. You could also leave that out and then just add an extra tablespoon of dark soy sauce, and you'll be okay. I like to use those two in tandem though, because I find that they both help kind of like create those like characteristics of like caramel, like malted sweetness. But if you don't have oyster sauce, you could just use more dark soy sauce and you'll be okay. And then last up, that's just a single tablespoon of brown sugar. And just like with the oyster sauce, if you don't have brown sugar, you could also just use plain sugar. Just use white sugar. It'll be fine. If you're not familiar with brown sugar, though, it is, lots of people think, or I for a while, or for a long time, thought that brown sugar was brown sugar. That is not what brown sugar is. It's actually, brown sugar is sugar that has been cooked in molasses. That's what gives it its dark brown color. Not super important to know that. What's most important to know is that since it's cooked in molasses, it gives the sugar a more molassesy and like caramelly quality to it. so it has a little bit like more like deeper and rich qualities to the sweetness that you're bringing. So lots of times when you see me using sugar in a recipe, it's generally going to be brown sugar because I find it has a little bit more complexity to it. So that's our sauce. Alright, finally, last up, the main event for what we're doing today. This is our Thai basil. So again, I mentioned this earlier, but if you're trying to stick really traditional with your Thai pad Gra Prow, a Thai basil chicken or a pad Gra Prow, Thai basil, what it actually uses is holy basil, which is a similar form of basil. Almost impossible. I have not seen anywhere that you can find holy basil. Anywhere, at least here in California, I have not seen it anywhere. The reason being because holy basil, it only comes up in Thai food, and it also is just like with any other kind of basil, very, very perishable. So unless you can source it locally, you're probably not going to find it. So that's unlike, like, say, like a tomato or like onions, which are like kind of like shipped across state lines lots of times. Fruits and other veggies, sometimes they're like frozen. That's how tomatoes are stay in season for so long. Same with like avocados, stuff like that. With Thai basil and just like any kind of basil, really, unless you're sourcing it locally, you're probably not going to find it. So I don't think I have ever come across holy basil in any grocery store here in the Bay Area. So that kind of sucks, but it should be okay. What I'm going to use today, this is just straight up Thai basil. I think like the difference being is like Thai basil has more of a like a licoricey and like, yeah, more of a licoricey quality to it, whereas like holy basil would have more of like a star anise quality or so different. I've actually never come across Thai holy basil, so there you go. But they're similar enough where we could get away with subbing them out. I have also seen some folks say that you can also just swap in sweet basil or like just straight up Italian basil. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but it would certainly give you like a very similar like aromatic quality. But again, I stand by doing what you have to in order to make a recipe work. Again, I also mentioned this earlier too, but Thai basil, just like any other basil, it's really, really delicate, and it's also very, very perishable. So I bought this 2 days ago, and it's all you might notice it's already wilting quite a bit, which is like kind of knew that would happen when I bought it 2 days ago. But since it's so perishable, what that does mean is that there's no real point in saving any of this. I'm just going to use all of it because probably by tomorrow this Thai basil would have gone bad already. So, but also because it's in the name, Thai basil chicken or pad Gra Prow, it uses a lot of basil. It's like the most Thai basil that I have ever used in any one recipe. So we're going to use all of it. And it's going to give us a lot of like really nice aromatic and fragrant qualities to it. But just like with sweet basil, it is really, really delicate. So I'm going to hold this off. We're not even going to add this on heat. So what we're going to do is we're going to finish cooking, and then I'm going to add this to our finished stir fry. And that's basically just going to toss off heat, and that's going to be pretty much all we need. It's just going the residual heat of our stir fry is going to essentially bloom their fragrance and just sort of like wilt the leaves a little bit, and that's going to be everything that we need to do. So there's our Thai basil. So, all right, head over to the stove. So over on the stove, I've got my wok. It's going to start getting heated up. And what we're first going to start off with is our aromatics. Lots of people ask me why my fire or smoke alarms never go off. Before I start cooking, anytime that you see me wok frying, which is basically anytime that we're streaming, the first thing that I do before I start cooking anything is there's 3 different windows that are always open. Even when it's really cold out, I still open all 3 of those windows. And then also just to be safe, I usually unplug my smoke detectors too. That's why they never go off. But also having an overhead is really, really useful too. So. But the other thing, the reason that I brought that up is because today we're cooking with Thai chili, and anytime that you're cooking with Thai chili, very, very, very important, more important than like most of the time, you really want to make sure that those windows are open because the seeds of the Thai chili are still in them. And when you cook those seeds, the capsaicin will release. And essentially, if you start breathing that in, essentially what you're breathing in is pepper spray. That's what pepper spray is made out of. and it is very caustic, so you want to make sure that your windows are open when that hits the wok. Ooh, is it possible to make wide chow fun noodles at home? Yeah, I have. So there have been a couple of people that have done the chow fun recipes. So I've seen at least 2 different people who have done. I think it was the beef chow fun, and then I saw somebody else did this with the pad see ew, and they made the chow fun. I have not actually tried to make chow fun myself, but what they told me was at least they mentioned it. They said that it wasn't that hard to make. It kind of makes sense because it's essentially just a rice noodle. Or just like just rice flour, kind of like making pasta. So just like I think when you make Italian pasta, it's basically just flour plus water plus egg, and then you kind of toss it together. I'm pretty sure. So I'm not sure, not positive because I've never actually done this, but I'm pretty sure that chow fun is just rice flour plus water, and then you just toss it together and roll it really thin. You probably can do it with like in a standard pasta extruder too. Don't quote me on that. I have never actually made chow fun. But I do know from other people who have told me that it was relatively easy to make. So if you go to the Wu Can Cook subreddit, so r/WuCanCook, there were at least 2 different people that made that chow fun themselves. If you don't want to do that, or if it's too much work, what I have often done is just use dry rice stick, which is like dry rice noodles. They're pantry stable. You can find them in like the dry goods. Next to like near pastas. Actually, usually if you're in an American grocery store, you'll probably see it in the Asian food section. But it's pantry stable, so you can swap that in, and it's gonna be absolutely okay to use that stuff. The main difference is those dry noodles. They're a little bit thicker, so it's kind of like the difference between like a handmade Italian noodle versus like dry fettuccine. Obviously, there's a huge difference, but you can still use them interchangeably, and you'll get away with it. Airmatics, yeah, definitely, no worries. Let me know if you give it a shot. Definitely hit the Wu Can Cook subreddit because I saw at least 2 different people post pictures. So they made that chow. I thought that was cool. I didn't know it was that easy to do. So cool. So our wok is nice and hot. We're going to start cooking. First up is our oil. This is grapeseed oil that I'm using. Lots of people ask me what kind of cooking oil I'm cooking with. Most traditionally would be the use of peanut oil. Today I'm cooking with grapeseed oil. I've been cooking with grapeseed oil for a while now. I ran out of peanut oil. Here we are. Anything with high heat potential will work though. Grapeseed oil. In our food pop-up we do it with canola oil because it's the cheapest one. So there's our aromatics in. There's our garlic and ginger. There's my chilies. Almost forgot the chilies. There's our chilies going in. Once again, make sure your windows are nice and open at this point. Once those chilies go in, you're gonna once again, which you're basically breathing in pepper spray. So. Make sure those windows are open before you add that into your wok. Next up, this is my ground turkey. We're working with ground turkey today going in. What I generally try not to do is dump everything into the wok. I like to try and break that up into some smaller pieces. That doesn't always work for me. Today it kind of didn't work. Not the end of the world if you don't manage to do that, but you just want to make sure and run your so that you don't end up with big old chunks of ground mince. And at this point, you're going to notice our cornstarch is coming into play here, and that's really what's preventing that. If we didn't add that cornstarch, that ground mince would already be cooked on the exterior, and then you would have either overcooked ground turkey or uncooked interior portions of the uneven cooking of the ground mince. Touch the pan to see if it's hot, yeah. Yeah, lots of people ask me how to tell if the wok is hot enough yet. Usually what I like to do is we're looking for like smoke. When you start seeing a dry wok smoke, that's generally a sign that you've got nice hot heat. If you're still not sure, you generally, if it's very hot, if it's really hot, you'll know, because that thing is going to be ripping hot. So you generally can't, it will be unmistakable that your wok is nice and hot. If you're still not sure, the way that I have always been taught to do it is to add the cooking oil to the wok, and then usually in Chinese cuisine what you do is you get wooden chopsticks, and then you add those chopsticks to the wok, and like put the wooden chopsticks into the wok. You should see it's hot enough, is those chopsticks should start bubbling around the wood, because it's essentially cooking the chopsticks. That's generally a sign that your wok is hot enough. I've been doing wok cooking for so long that I have gotten pretty good at eyeballing it. But if you're not sure, that's the like the old grandma trick to checking your wok temperature with some chopsticks. All right, so that's our ground mince. That's about done. We're doing some batch cooking today so that we can cook each element in a closed or an empty wok. So there's a ground pork, turkey coming out of the wok. Yeah, let's clean this wok out. Whenever possible, when we batch cook, I like to try and avoid rinsing the wok out. Because essentially what's happening when you rinse your wok out in between batch cooks is you're rinsing out flavor. So today what we're rinsing out right now, that was a whole bunch of pork, meat fat, and like a bunch of the marinade, so a bunch of that cooked soy sauce, maybe some aromatics. There's probably some chili going on in there. So whenever possible, I like to skip that step of rinsing the wok out. You'll know if you need to, because what's happening is what's left behind in the wok will eventually start burning. So if you skip that step, basically what you're running the risk of is what's left behind is going to start charring. And then what we're doing next is is searing our green beans. And if those get left behind while we sear those green beans, we're going to have a whole bunch of burnt turkey or burnt ground mince in our wok fry. So for our particular use today, we probably want to go ahead and rinse that wok out. But if you find that you don't need to, if you think you could get away with it, definitely skip that step, because there's a bunch of good stuff that you're rinsing out. It's also the main downside of cooking at home versus wok cooking on a wok burner, is that you've got to do batch cooking. All right, so we're waiting once again. Oh, somebody asked this too. If you're not sure if your wok is hot enough yet, so the first thing that we see here while this is heating up, well, the first thing that you'll notice is that all of the water that was in the wok just finished evaporating. That's the first sign that your wok is hot enough. If there's water in it and it evaporates really quick, like that, when you start seeing that happen, that means your wok is nice and hot. If you're still not sure, the other thing that we want to look for is all of this smoke coming up off of the wok. That's another good sign that your wok is nice and hot. And then finally, the last thing we want to look for when we put our cooking oil in, and then add a wooden spatula or chopsticks in. You should see it. Yeah, you can see it on YouTube. I don't know if you can see it on Reddit. But here at the bottom where the spoon is in the oil, you'll see that the oil is starting to bubble up around the wood. That's generally the sign that you're looking for. The old grandma method of like checking your wok's temperature. All right, one more long yell, and then here is our green beans going in. So next up, what we're going to do here is we're going to sear our green beans, kind of similar to how we do meat sears. So like chicken sears, steak sears, stuff like that. Basically what I'm doing is I'm spreading those green beans out so that what we're trying to avoid is stuff like this. So we don't want green beans to be stacked on top of each other like this. If it's sitting on top of itself like that, what's going to happen is the green bean's just going to end up steaming, which is not what we want. We want it to be searing here. So that means that we want to make sure, as best as we possibly can, that there's no green beans that are popping up on top of itself. If you're really committed, you could even go through and put these in one at a time. I'm way too lazy to do that, but there we go. So we're laying those. I'm gonna let that sear for 2 minutes. Every once in a while, when I'm wok frying in a round bottom wok and we're searing, I like to go through and give the wok a little bit of a rotation like that. And that's basically just moving that oil around so that the stuff that's sitting on the exterior ring of that wok is not going to burn because it's too dry on that exterior. If we were cooking, so lots of people ask about how wok frying translates between when I'm cooking at home and when I'm cooking on the wok burners. If we were on wok burners, usually when we do this step in the pop-ups on the burners, the sear step usually only takes about 45 seconds or so. Today we're doing it. This is going to take a full 2 minutes. That's because of the lower heat potential on our home ranges. It's also part of the way that we're able to send out point of order cooks so quickly. Cool. Yeah. Cool. We have 50 seconds. Hello to everyone just tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your first time tuning in, we're here streaming every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:30 PST with new recipes. Those are out over on my YouTube channel every Friday. So this Friday coming up, as in tomorrow, is going to be a recipe for PF Chang's hack for Singapore black pepper chicken, which is really interesting because it sort of has a lot of cultural influences from really traditional cooking, plus a lot of really weird abstract things that I think just come from American cuisine. Black pepper. I don't think I've ever seen black pepper come from Chinese food. So that was really interesting. That recipe is coming up tomorrow. It's part of a series that we've been doing where we've been hacking a lot of stuff that comes from really classic Chinese American cuisine. So PF Chang's, Panda Express, that we did a Quickly's hack at one point. Lots of stuff like that. So if you're interested in stuff like that, definitely head over to the YouTube channel. Check out what's going on over there. We're working our way up to 5,500 subscribers by the end of the month. So if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, please hop over and subscribe. Feed him Charles. He's hungry. All right. So there's our 2-minute marker. I'm giving our green beans a toss. You'll notice we have all of this nice color coming up on our green beans. All of this we're looking for. At this point, if we were going to steam, what I would do is add a little bit of water, maybe like a 1/4 cup of water or less, and then put a cap on top of that wok. And then we would sear that for about 90 seconds, and that's going to give us a little bit of tenderness in our green bean. If you like a crunchy green bean, we're going to go for a crunchy green bean today. You can go ahead and skip that step. So since I'm skipping that step, the first thing that I'm going to do, because I just noticed that this is happening, is that my wok is a little bit underheated, so you can kind of hear it. Maybe. Not sure how much compression is on my mics these days. But what you'll notice is that my wok, it's not really sizzling super aggressively like it was before. That's generally the first sign that I look for when I notice that my wok is underheated. So I'm going to stop moving stuff around. I was about to add my onions in, but I just noticed that my wok is underheated. So I'm going to stop moving that, and then we're going to let that reheat. That will take about maybe 30 seconds of just like idle sit time. And that's going to help our wok make sure that it's nice and hot. Yeah. That's also, by the way, by the same token, is also going to help our green beans pick up a little bit more color, which is nice too. So, dual use. All right. There's our onions going in. If you're following the original recipe, this is at this point when we used shallots. Today we're using onions because I forgot to buy shallots. So, here we are. So I mentioned this earlier too, onions as well as shallots, both of which are very delicate vegetables. So we want, anytime that you see an onion getting into a wok fry, at least in a Woo Can Cook recipe, you'll notice that they don't end up staying in the wok for very long. I think maybe at most I'll leave an onion in the wok for about a minute, maybe 2 minutes at most. And that's because we're really not trying to get a nice translucent or caramelized onion. We're not trying to get it cooked down. like you would see in a lot of like American uses of an onion. What we're really just trying to do is like cook off a little bit of that abrasive quality to our onions, and that's really everything that we're trying to do. There's not much else that's going to happen in our cook. And that's the quality of onion that you'll probably associate with a lot of wok fried vegetables, is where it's like the vegetable isn't necessarily raw because it is definitely cooked, but it's cooked very, very briefly at very, very high heat. So you do this with vegetable, like bell peppers, you'll do it with green beans, broccoli, onions, all of these things. That's how those things are cooked. That's how you get that quality of it's also the reason why extremely high heat is very important to wok cooking. So there's my ground mince or my ground turkey going back in. Not to drop stuff. Don't feed the Roomba. And last up, here's my sauce going in. Anytime that I'm using dark soy sauce in a recipe, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're not just dumping that sauce in. We want to add a little bit at a time, and then adjust. If you don't think that you need all of it, don't add all of it. Because dark soy sauce, because it's so concentrated, you can over season really, really quickly with dark soy sauce. So. Yep, I'm going to use all of it. So today I'm using all of it, as it so happens. But if you find that you're not going to use it all, very often I have avoided using all of what's in my sauce bowl. Just depending on like how many green beans I chopped, how much pork is in the wok, how much, just generally how much stuff is in the wok. I have very, very often skipped out on using all of that sauce. Like this. So last up, what we're going to do is I'm going to pull this off heat. Very important, we're doing this off heat today because the last step that we're going to do is include our Thai basil. But because Thai basil is so delicate, we want to do that last step off heat, otherwise that Thai basil is going to overcook. So here's our Thai basil going in. And then essentially what we're just going to do is give it a toss. Pretty sure this camera lens is going to fog out. And then what's going to happen is, so the residual heat of our stir fry is going to start blooming out the aromatic qualities of our Thai basil. That's really nice because it's so delicate. And that's really all of the cooking that you need to do on a Thai basil leaf. Any more cooking than that, any more like heat or aggressive wok cooking, and you're going to end up cooking out all of the flavor from your Thai basil stuff. So I'm going to put this in a bowl, and then the last step that we'll do is our egg. So let's plate this up. Nice kitchen. Yeah, thank you. Somebody pointed out to me recently that, they didn't point it out to me. They said, how do I feel about cooking in a small kitchen? And I did not realize until that person pointed it out that this kitchen is small, and it is pretty small. But here in the Bay Area, this is actually a pretty large kitchen. If you're in the Bay Area, this would be considered a relatively large kitchen. But thank you. I know that that's not what you were saying. But that was funny to me because I didn't realize that I had a small kitchen until that moment. All right. So at this point, you could just start eating. This is done. You could eat this right now. You do it with baby spinach. Yeah, that's a good way of cooking baby spinach too. You could also blanch baby spinach too. At this point, this is done. You could eat this right now. But if you want to go for the extra mile and definitely like the classic way of cooking, anything that comes from Thai cuisine with a little bit of street food influences, is we're gonna fry an egg on top. And if you've never done a wok fried sunny side up egg, you're missing out real bad. So this works best if you have a round bottom wok. By the way, this is one of the best reasons why to get yourself a round bottom wok, is because you can shallow fry, and shallow frying works really well with things like eggs, at least fried eggs. So that's maybe a lot of oil, definitely a lot of oil going into my wok. That's probably about like 4 or 5 tablespoons of oil in there. Just gonna pull this out. All right, and let's do some eggs. So you'll notice what's happening, because the wok is rounded out here at the bottom, what's happening is essentially my eggs submerging in oil. And this is maybe the closest that I've ever gotten to deep frying an egg. This is essentially what's happening. So we have all of this really aggressively high heat going on. And that's what's causing all of this like bubbly, like lacy edges going on here. But because we have this rounded bottom, you'll notice all the oil is just sort of like pooling up at the bottom. And that's going to give us this like really lacy egg like so. YouTube camera's blowing out. Both cameras are blowing out. That's too bad. Both cameras. There's this nice. There's the yolk for you. Do that again. I broke a yolk. Happens. If it has an island, make it feel. Yeah, my parents have an island in their kitchen. I actually grew up with a kitchen with an island, and it's dope. I miss having. I think I might prefer having a smaller kitchen, because when I cook in large kitchens, when we do the commissary kitchen that we cook in is obviously very large. When I cook in large kitchens, what I usually end up doing is like walking around the kitchen a lot, because you have to because the refrigerator is so far away, or because the stove is really far from where you're prepping, you end up like spreading out more, and then that ends up being more of a hindrance than anything else, because everything is so far away. So I've actually, because I've been cooking in small kitchens for so long, kind of just gotten used to it, and I think I might prefer it. But if I ever get a bigger kitchen, I probably will stop saying that. So yeah, what are we making? Yes, so thank you for asking. I forgot to mention that. Today we're doing a Thai street food dish called Pad Gra Prow. It's more colloquially here in the States, you'll see it referred to as like Thai basil chicken, or just like Thai basil stir fry, anything with the word Thai basil and some kind of meat involved. That's generally what you'll see it referred to in the States. What it essentially is a ground stir fry with probably the most important and iconic thing that you'll include is soy sauce or kicap menace, and a whole bunch of Thai basil, or if you're like really traditional, or if you're in Thailand, you'll probably see this done with holy basil. If you're in the States, you'll probably see it done with Thai basil, because holy basil is very difficult to track down in the States. So we just finished cooking, so the very last thing that we're doing right now is we're frying up some sunny side up eggs. And if you've never fried a wok fried egg before, you're missing out on the best possible type of fried egg. Yeah. Yeah, Liz, yeah, we broke a yolk. That was my bad. I was not paying attention and it broke. This one is okay though. I'm glad one person noticed that I broke a yolk though. Don't let me get away with shit. Alright, so that's it. Let's So this, by the way, last step that we're gonna take If you have a bunch of debris in your wok, so very important, this is actually not specifically just true with wok frying, but just cooking in general. If you have a lot of debris, the thing we want to do is pull off all of this extra stuff. But if you've got a lot of cooking oil left behind, which we do because I just fried that egg and that was probably like almost half a cup of oil. There's all cooking oil behind. Very, very important. This is true for any kind of kitchen. Don't let this go down the drain. If this goes down the drain, you're going to end up clogging your sinks. So usually what I have next to my sink at pretty much any time is a jar. It's filled with used cooking oil. It's basically just a jar of oil that's basically like the runoff of like all of the things that I have cooked. And that kind of just gets dumped out anytime I dump my deep fry oil, which has to go to recycling. But very, very important, don't let that stuff go down the drain or you're gonna clog your sink. And then your landlord's gonna be really annoying. Bitches, yeah, can you make it with a saucepan? You could totally make this with a saucepan. What I liked, before I was cooking in a wok, I used to do this in cast iron pan. It works really well. If you have a stainless steel, that will work really well too. Iodized aluminum or carbon steel saucepan, all of those things will work. Anything that is good for high heat will work just fine. So the main things that we want to avoid are things like basically anything with a Teflon layer to it. So Teflon non-stick pans, we want to avoid those because you're going to end up with, Teflon has a property to it where the Teflon coating itself doesn't get very hot, or it has a maximum heat that really just caps at like medium heat. It's sort of the same thing. It's the same thing that makes Teflon so great for scrambling eggs or doing anything over medium heat. Like basically anything that requires medium heat. That's what makes Teflon pans so useful. For the same, essentially because it regulates heat. You'll never overheat a Teflon pan if you're trying to cook on medium heat. So. By that same token, though, for wok frying, you want to try and avoid those Teflon pans because you're never going to get the wok, or never going to get the pan hot enough for wok, which makes, which brings me to the next point of so lots of people ask then, why do Teflon non-stick woks exist? I don't know. I don't know why those are a thing. That just confounds me, and for whatever reason, that's the thing that you see in a lot of like big box stores. So like when you go to like Target or Walmart or all of those big box stores where you get kitchenware. Lots and lots of times, probably like 90% of the time that I see those woks in stores, they have some kind of Teflon coating to it, and those things are really useless. I don't know. I genuinely don't know why they exist. So yeah. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, you could do it in a saucepan. You'll probably make a little bit of a mess because stuff's probably going to spill over the side. But as long as the pan can get really, really hot and you can keep it hot, then you're good to go. Yeah. My chef on the side, yeah, actually. So we run a catering company, pop-up, also called Wu Can Cook. So if you're here in the Bay Area, you can find Wu Can Cook, the catering company in the pop-up, at a bunch of locations all around the Bay Area. If you're in the Bay Area, we're going to be doing a pop-up this Halloween on Sunday, this Sunday at Degrees Play-Doh in East Oakland. So if you're in the Bay, come find us. Yeah, what did we use? Color, yeah, so we used a couple of things, probably like, probably the most important and like the only thing that you absolutely have to get that color is dark soy sauce. So if you're cooking like really traditional Thai cuisine, oh, thank you, Vanity. I don't know how to turn this sound effect off. Somebody just tipped on YouTube. Thank you. Yeah, so if you're cooking like really traditional like Thai cooking, what you'll probably see is the use of an ingredient. It's called Kiket Manis. It is essentially like a more syrupy version of soy sauce. So it's soy sauce, but it's thicker and it has a sweet element to it. If you're familiar with Chinese cooking, that description probably sounds very, very similar to the use of dark soy sauce, which is essentially the same thing. It just comes from Chinese cuisine. Here in Chinatown in Oakland, Kiket Manis is very hard to find because there's very few Southeast Asian grocery stores. I think the nearest Southeast Asian grocery store is like 5 miles away, so I would probably have to drive there. And even then, it's not actually a Thai grocery store. It's actually a Vietnamese grocery store, which generally can be pretty useful for finding Thai food. But so I oftentimes, when you see me cooking Thai stuff, will probably swap in Chinese ingredients. There is also a little bit of fish sauce too, though, and that's probably like the most important ingredient to like all Thai food is fish sauce. So. No lime. Yeah, I guess we could do lime. That actually would be pretty good. Let's do a lime. Let's see what these limes look like. This is not the most attractive lime. Thank you for reminding me. I forgot to do a lime. We could do a lime though. That's maybe like second to the use of fish sauce. Probably is going to be the lime. This is kind of an old lime, so it doesn't look great. But veggies. Oh, nice. Thank you. Thank you for subscribing. Yeah, I haven't been using limes a lot, so the limes that I have in the refrigerator are not super attractive. They're kind of old. But limes, by the way, if you notice, they have like brown spots. You don't have to throw them away. They're still good. But it just means that the exterior, you probably can't use the rind of that lime, so you can't grate it anymore. But when you cut it open, it's still okay. So when you start seeing little brown spots like that, that's not the end of the world. You could still use that. If we were in the pop-ups, I would probably have to start throwing that away because people would complain that it looks gross. But it's totally edible. You could still eat that stuff. So it's just starting to turn brown on the outside. Cool. Yeah. Thank you for calling me out on the lime. I forgot to. I forget to do lime all the time. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your release streams, we're here every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:30 PST. With the new recipes coming out over on the YouTube channel every Friday. So this particular Gra Prow, which we just finished cooking, came out, I think this is like a couple months ago, came out with this recipe. Coming up tomorrow is going to be PF Chang's hack for black pepper, Singapore black pepper chicken, which is a really, really interesting one. That was actually a really interesting one as a part of that series that I've done in a while. Because it contains a couple of different things that are really, really iconic and like feel just really traditional to me for like how Chinese food is cooked. So the thing that stood out to me a lot was that we did it with a steamed chicken, which is like a really common thing to see in Chinese food. Is like chicken that's like marinated in ginger and then steamed. And then what happens is that steam will kind of like bring out all of the aromatics of the ginger. So we did that with that Singapore chicken. But then in addition to that, I also have a bunch of like really weird American things that I have never seen before, like the use of black pepper. I don't think I've ever seen black pepper used in any Chinese cooking ever. So that was really interesting to me. So that's coming out tomorrow. That's part of this whole series that we've been doing, where we've been like kind of taking apart a lot of Chinese American classics. So we've done a bunch of stuff from PF Chang's. We did their Mongolian beef. We did a bunch of stuff from Panda Express. Did like their General Tso's chicken and honey sesame chicken, stuff like that. Kind of like deconstructing those dishes. And then kind of like taking a look at what are the American qualities of that dish, like the black pepper, and then reassembling it without all of those American qualities, and kind of like taking a look at what do these really Americanized Chinese dishes look like if you were to try and attempt them without the American qualities. So that's part of that series. We have a whole bunch of those coming up. That's coming out this Friday too. So what else? We're working our way up to 5,500 subscribers by the end of the month. I think we're like maybe like 100 short. So if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, please hop over, give it a subscribe. Lots of fun stuff coming up. And lastly, if you're here in the Bay Area, I just mentioned this too, but if you're here in the Bay Area, so I also run a catering company and a pop-up. It's called Woo Can Cook. We do pop-ups all around the California, like the Bay Area, well, specifically in Alameda, because that's where our health department is. But we do pop-ups all around Alameda County. And if you're here in the Bay Area, we're going to be in East Oakland at a bar called Degrees Plato. We're doing that pop-up this coming Halloween, so Sunday, this weekend, Halloween night. We're going to be there all night, so if you want to come find us and get some food, we're rolling out a couple new menu items, and I'm really stoked for it. So, honey walnut shrimp, yeah, that's on my to-do list. Actually, a couple of people have asked for that. And I actually have a bunch of honey, and I think I have walnuts, and I definitely have shrimp. I will probably try that. Thank you, thank you. I'll probably try that probably this weekend, maybe on Monday. But cool. I love getting requests. Alice, oh yeah, we'll never know if the yolk is overcooked. This might be overcooked. I don't think it's overcooked. No, this one is good. Not the greatest yolk. It's acceptable. All right, thanks everyone. I'll see you soon. We're doing a black pepper chicken that's coming out on Friday, and then this coming Tuesday, this week we'll be cooking through that live. So I'll see you then. All right.
Everybody's got to go up. Sometimes funny how we shoot the move. Still, will we fight it, baby? Alright, never mind. Then I found what I'm looking for, baby. Yes, I found it now. Alright, I'm falling in love with love, and it's bringing me down. Want to be, baby, yes. Do you want to be, baby? Alright. Oh, wait, now, babe. I said everybody wants to be nothing. I still got dreams, but they don't love me like they used to love it. And I'm reminded of how bad I used to want it. And yes, I still got dreams, but more like a junkie of my 20s, and it's breaking me down. Do you want to be, baby? Yes, Stone on your love all the time. You're as smooth as Tennessee whiskey. You're as sweet as strawberry wine. You're bad. Glass of brandy, darling, I'll stay. Stone on your love all the time.
Stop flipping for my enemies.